Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're unpacking the visceral nostalgia of the American shopping mall and discovering exactly why its death was no accident. For a lot of us, the mall wasn't just a place to buy jeans. It was literally the definitive public square of our youth. But if you walk into a modern retail space today, you'll probably feel a really cold, jarring difference. So we're going to dive right into the data, the architecture, and the deeply calculated corporate decisions that, honestly, actively dismantled our indoor communities. Let's get into it.
But before we get into the hard architectural data, let's take a step right back into the 1980s arcade. Just think about that total sensory immersion for a second. You walked in and bam! You were immediately hit by this wall of bleeps, bloops, and recorded crowd cheering. Picture it. You're surrounded by glowing neon lights, gripping a slippery plastic steering wheel with sweaty palms, standing on those thin, kind of sticky patterned carpets, and breathing in that totally unmistakable smell of hot electronics and old dust. It was an environment perfectly designed to just pull you completely out of your everyday life.
And then you'd step out of the arcade and get hit by something else entirely. Do you remember that specific smell wafting through the food court? It was this intoxicating, perfect blend of warm pretzels, sizzling burgers, sweet cinnamon, and something fried that you couldn't quite place but absolutely had to have. That rush of cool air conditioning and the hum of conversation signaled one glorious thing. Your $5 bill was about to stretch across an entire afternoon.
Section 1. The Golden Age of Linger, when malls were the public square.
You see, those original indoor malls weren't just about swiping a credit card as fast as possible. They were deliberately designed as a third place, a neutral zone outside of home, work, or school, where we were actually encouraged to simply exist. During this golden age, massive food court titans reigned supreme, cashing in on this captive, lingering audience. Take the frozen yogurt giant TCBY, for example. During the diet-conscious 80s, they absolutely capitalized on the mall boom, expanding to a staggering 1,800 locations by the early 2000s. I mean, they were total anchor of the American weekend.
Or think about Burger Chef. Long before the Golden Arches totally conquered the fast food world, Burger Chef was a revolutionary chain boasting over 1,000 spots. They actually pioneered the customizable Works bar, letting you pile on your own toppings way before modern fast casual dining was even a thing. They even beat McDonald's to the punch with a kids' meal that included a toy. These chains flourished specifically because the mall's design kept us inside, hungry and happy for hours on end.
Section 2. The Architectural Anchor, the Secret of the Fountain.
Because actually, the real secret to why we hung around so long wasn't just the food. It was a psychological tool anchored right in center court. Think back to the sound of the old mall. You know, that heavy, echoing splash of chlorinated industrial water bouncing off fake marble? As observers have pointed out, that steady white noise acted like architectural Valium. It was literally the sound that meant you were safe. It proved the building was so confident it had conquered the outside weather that it brought thousands of gallons of water indoors just for decoration. It laid down this blanket of sound that blurred footsteps and conversations, subtracting any awkwardness from the space and naturally slowing your walking pace.
Let's look at the psychology here. It really comes down to the difference between a bench and a fountain. A bench is honest, sure, but it implies fatigue, waiting, or even weakness, right? A bench basically tells you to sit down because you're tired. But a fountain? A fountain implies contemplation. It turns loitering into a permitted, almost classy activity. You weren't just a broke teenager killing time, you were, watching the fountain. It gave you active permission to just exist in that space without needing to justify it by buying something. It told you to stay.
Section 3. The Pivot to Hostility, the Death of the Linger Economy.
So why did the water stop flowing? Well, in the early 2000s, management spreadsheets pretty much took over the whole show. The core metric of retail shifted drastically from duration, as in how long can we keep them here, to throughput, meaning how fast can we move them through. In this new spreadsheet-driven world, lawyers started eyeing the fountains. They labeled them attractive nuisances. Suddenly, a calming architectural feature was viewed strictly as a wet spot on the balance sheet. It was a slip hazard waiting for a lawsuit, a mold incubator requiring constant, expensive chemical maintenance. And honestly, the worst part for them? It sat right in center court, the absolute most expensive real estate in the building, without generating a single dime of advertising revenue.
So, once the fountains were drained, the basins filled with dirt and fake ferns, and our permission to linger was officially revoked, what actually filled that massive void in center court?
The answer? Screens. Impeccably dry, highly monetizable screens. We basically traded the messy, calming presence of real water for massive, glowing rectangles. Today, you'll see digital waterfalls in crisp 4K that demand your attention
prompt you to scan QR codes, harvest your data, and loop endless advertisements. Real water lives in the background and gives your thoughts space to breathe. Screens, on the other hand, aggressively compete for your eyeballs.
This contrast perfectly captures our current architectural reality. The old mall relied on the Gruen effect, a design pleasant and confusing enough to make you wander, get a little lost, and accidentally buy things. It was built on circles and gravitational centers. The new mall, it's built entirely on straight lines, borrowing its logic straight from airports and fast food drive-thrus. It's an architecture of rapid throughput and transaction flow. Pausing is now considered a failure state. Literally, if you stand still today without buying something, you trigger suspicion.
Section 4. The Corporate Curse, Dismantling the Ecosystem. As the physical architecture became hostile to the lingerer, our beloved food court brands suffered their own systemic collapse. This corporate graveyard of the American food court maps the destruction perfectly. Almost every iconic chain on this list was doing totally fine until an acquisition happened. Hardee's bought Burger Chef and killed it. Mrs. Fields bought Hot Sam Pretzels and phased it out. Dairy Queen absorbed Orange Julius, slowly erasing those magical standalone counters with the whirring blenders. Marriott bought the highly theatrical Farrell's ice cream parlors, and the magic just faded. In almost every single case, a corporate buyout promised massive expansion, but instead delivered a slow, calculated death to our favorite places.
Section 5. Mourning the Public Square, the Aftermath of Efficiency.
When we step back and look at the empty husks of these buildings today, or even the sterile, screen-filled hallways of the ones that managed to survive, the emotional toll is surprisingly heavy. People who grew up in this era have really strong feelings about what went wrong. As one Gen X voice on Reddit pointed out, if you want to totally kill a mall, attach a Walmart. Replacing traditional anchor stores like Sears or Kmart with massive, hyper-efficient superstores actively bypassed the interconnected, wandering ecosystem of the classic mall. Shoppers just didn't need to meander through the corridors anymore. The superstore handled it all, bleeding the smaller, interior stores absolutely dry.
And this quote beautifully summarizes the nostalgia. We realize now that we aren't just missing Hot Sam Pretzels or the chaotic noise of an arcade. We are actively grieving the loss of an era that prioritized community over absolute efficiency. We miss a time when a building offered us a neutral place to gather, a place that didn't constantly demand our attention or our data.
Which leaves us with this final, vital question. We purged the architecture of linger in favor of cold, hard throughput. We drained the fountains and bolted televisions to the floor. So, where can we gather today without being treated like a walking wallet? What is our new public square? It's definitely something to think about the next time you find yourself with nowhere to sit. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. I'll catch you next time.